morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to get started on episode 39 of the Case 310G Bulldozer Restoration Project. We're going to bring you along. The goal for today is to get these parts cleaned. We have some surface rust just from the parts sitting out in the open air. Did a little bit of polishing already. These are the tools we're going to be using. We've got a Makita 1/4-inch die grinder with variable speed. That is very, very important for these knotted wire wheels. Got all different shapes and sizes of them here. And then we have a knotted wire wheel for our Metabo 5-inch angle grinder, or 4-inch, forget what that is, but it's the larger one of the two. We're going to go ahead and get started prepping the casting. The casting came out very clean. I just blew it off with the air compressor. Did a very, very nice job all the way around. These two tools are my personal favorite for stripping like this. We can now get started on bearings and our input shaft. We are going to start the reassembly process now. This is our main input shaft. And if you will remember, the bearing that was on this input shaft had this mystery ring on it. I have deduced that this was a repair done by someone, done very well, I might add. So with that being said, I am replacing the bearing with a new bearing. The new part number is 980812. Is bearing PTO CA. Not sure what the CA stands for. That is going to correspond with this casting right here, and right here is where the repair ring goes. We will be using bearing mount on this. I wanted to show you the parts diagram here. You can see we're in the bell housing. Number 8 is the bearing we are looking for, and over here Number 8 is a 03354 BF bearing clutch drive shaft. That is the old number, and the new number is as I previously stated. We are set up in the press. We are going to press this up to the outermost snap ring here. Press blocks moved slightly. I'm going to try this again. The block standing up. There we have it. Bearing does not slide freely, just like we want it. We pushed on the inner race only, as you should. Now we're ready to reinstall the snap ring. We are gently going to massage the snap ring down over into the groove. Oh, not so gently, but it snapped in, so we are good. Having accomplished that, I am going to clean the ID of this repair sleeve, we'll call it, because this newer bearing has not churned as much as this one has. You can kind of tell that the old bearing, this would have been churning in there. What I mean by that is the bearing is able to turn inside the sleeve. This was probably much tighter when they initially put it in. So what we are going to do is clean the inside of this sleeve, and then we will mount this with bearing mount, and then probably even the parent bore will get bearing mount on the outside of this repair sleeve. Here you can see we have cleaned the outside and the inside of this sleeve. Did a pretty nice job on it. We're now going to mount it to this surface with bearing mount. I did not like installing that with a steel hammer. However, any deformation that I did will easily be rectified just by sanding. We will do several test fits on the other parent bore before we slide this in with bearing mount on it. And this is just a mild steel sleeve, so no harm done. Moving on to the parent bore, you can see that this has been peened with a center punch before, and that is what they used to retain this sleeve. We have cleaned everything with our brake cleaner. Now we are going to use bearing mount on the outside of the sleeve and the parent bore, and you can see here this goes in and spins freely. So this is exactly what bearing mount was built for. They say you're supposed to apply it and then put it in a twisting motion like that, and then we will let that cure, and we'll be ready for more assembly of the other pieces. This slips over, and this is what the throwout bearing rides on, is this piece here, goes up and down. Have our Permatex PX 680/50. This is rated for up to 15 thousandths gap, is what I'm told. I think that would be pushing it a little bit, but it is what it is. I like a nice thin coating. along the outside. Now we'll simply slip this in, twist as we go. And there we go. Within 10 minutes, this will set up hard enough to continue assembly, and within 24 hours, it will be completely cured. While that is curing, I'm going to go ahead and chase all of our threads on the main bell housing casting. Back over on the press, we are going to push our throwout bearing off. I really feel like this would be a good one. I'll probably save it back just for a rainy day. And I have this 1" to 3/4 socket adapter that is, I believe, just the right bore size, or OD rather, not bore, to push this off. There we have it. Simple slip fit. Of course, you always want to catch these parts as well. I had my hand underneath. There's still a big old blob of grease that we were never able to get clean after all that cleaning we did. Working now on the throwout bearing, I was able to get this through Berkey's, and the new part number is 480520C91. This is the old bearing. You can see it has a A2721-3. I did actually get these outsourced, but the bearing seemed very cheap, and I could not get it to spin by hand, and so I was a little leery of that. This one I can get to spin by hand. Hopefully it's coming through on camera. It is stiff. Came in this box here. Says made in USA on the sticker, but on this bearing I can see no markings at all. I've looked pretty thoroughly and I don't see anything, so I'm kind of suspecting this is China, but it is what it is. I'm going to use it. When you are installing a throwout bearing, you want to pay attention to the grease slot here. And here you can see we have the inside grease ring, and then right there you can see daylight through it. I took a little tiny bore brush and cleaned that out perfectly. Got that very, very clean. That is where you want to correspond the grease hole with the grease slot on the throwout bearing. That way, that's the only way you will ever get grease inside of these once it's on the machine. This being a thrust bearing, you can push on the outer surface, but you still need to be careful. Just use your head and it will work out fine for you. I'm going to use this block of wood. Nope, we're not quite square. Okay. And there we have it. Newly installed thrust bearing. Oh yeah, that's sweet right there. Has a nice spin to it as well. Very, very nice. I like it. It is the following day. Our part has cured up very nicely, spins freely as it should. We're going to chase the threads here. Moving right along in assembly, I saved my old bolts and it was a good thing. I had them in a Ziploc bag and labeled, because these bolts right here are 7/8 of an inch, and I just ordered a 3/4. I don't believe 7/8 of an inch is available anymore. I could be mistaken on that. But when I did a pre-assembly on this, I had about 2.5 threads that were not hooking up. Probably would be fine, but like Charlie said, at least you can sleep at night if you use the old bolt that was the proper length. So just wire wheeled these, cleaned them up. They're grade 5. I am going to change the lock washers because some of them seem to be a little squished flat. And so we will at least have brand new grade 5 lock washers in the assembly. Continuing on with our assembly, we have the cross shaft polished to a high shine with emery cloth. We've cleaned our bore, we've cleaned our keyways. I went over to the main shop and just got 2 brand new Woodruff keys because we keep this particular size in stock by the hundreds. We use these all the time. So now we will go ahead and assembly lube everything and start sliding it together. Giving our Woodruff keys a nice dose of assembly lube. Putting these in the same way they came out from our initial fit. We will now gently tap the Woodruff keys in with our punch till they appear to be flat. You can hear when they bottom out. Now we just move them till they look flat. Like I said, I hope you guys can hear that change in tone. Once they bottom out, you know it very quickly. I believe those look pretty good. This one could use just a little bit here. He's ramped just slightly. There you go. Now I am driving this forward with just the palm of my hand. We're gonna go really slow here. I am pushing on this fork. Not the best plan, but this is how it came apart after all, and we cleaned things very thoroughly. Okay, we actually went a little bit too far. You can just barely see the Woodruff key peeking out there. So we'll just pull it back slightly. I'm gonna gently massage the end of the shaft here. I don't remember the protrusion we had, but I'm gonna guess that's just about right. We have probably 3/8 of an inch sticking out on this side. Don't know if there's witness marks where it had ran. Oh yeah. Yeah, we have a witness mark. So now we can tell if we are centered. We are not. Need to go this way. Just a scooch. Yep, I can live with that. That's a eyeball center, but I think it's perfect. We're gonna go ahead and lock this down. We can always move it later. The assembly lube is not going anywhere. We are using replacement 1¼ inch hardware. With anti-seize, of course. Here is a look inside. Hoping you guys can tell. Here's a look at the old witness mark. It is right on the edge of that bushing. Now we can proceed to lock this down. I'm going to go ahead and lock the yoke down. Okay. Don't see any interference issues. Moving on to reinstalling the throwout bearing. I went to the local auto parts store that normally does pretty good on making hydraulic hoses for us. And this is what I started with. This is a swivel hydraulic fitting on this end and a 1/8 NPT on this end. I asked the gentleman at the counter, can you make me something this short and this flexible? He said, let me take it in the back and see what I can come up with. The gentleman came up with this very large, ridiculously large hydraulic hose. I believe this to be 3/8. There's no markings on it that are discernible, at least to me. And it is kind of bendy, but I believe it is steel reinforced. Hydraulic line, can't really blame the guy. He probably doesn't know any better. 1/8 inch NPT and the same hydraulic fitting on the other side. Unusable because by the time we put it in, the fitting just on this end is going to be way too close to make that kind of a turn, and it's just not going to work. This would have been the original configuration, and it's just not going to work in this application. This is too rigid and pushes way too hard by the time you get it down where you need it. With all of that being said, $29. Well spent. Moving on, we went to Jeffrey Bezos and picked up a 12-inch, 1/8 inch NPT, 3000 PSI grease line. We also picked up a $1.99, 1/8 inch NPT male and female, 90-degree turn. We have our 90-degree turn. Try keep my hands out of the way. Get this one started. There we go. If you will remember back, these were not overly tight. We're not talking a lot of pressure here, even though this line is rated for 3000 PSI. We will never get there because this just simply is a loose fit sleeve here that the throwout bearing rides on. Now we have that established. I think that's plenty tight for our purposes here. The only reason this is going to work without the hydraulic fitting here is because I can slip the throwout bearing in just barely. I can slip that in like so. If I was not able to, this would be a real challenge. You would need a swivel end on each one of these, but we do not need that. Like I said, these were not overly tight when I took them loose. We are live, folks. a little awkward. There we go. I think I can get one more turn out of that. Oh, and I want to use assembly lube here. We have lubricated everything thoroughly. Playing with this, getting everything just the way we want it. And Bob's your uncle, Robert's your father's brother. That is complete. I think I have the grease line perfect. I don't believe it's under a twist. It's up against this housing wall, but I don't think there's anything we can do about that. The other one was like that as well. Very, very nicely done. With that, ladies and gentlemen, this episode has come to a close. I would like to thank everyone that came along on the adventure today. Please like, share, and subscribe. That really helps out the channel. And we'll see you next time.